Hi, hello and welcome. My name is Jonathan Zwicker. I'm the director of the Center for Japanese Studies, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you here today for what is actually the first of what we hope to become a series of current event lectures sponsored in partnership by the Center for Japanese Studies and the International Institute. It's a really great honor and a pleasure to welcome back to Ann Arbor Dr. Masashi Nishihara, who earned his PhD here in political science in 1970. Dr. Nishihara will be introduced by my colleague Kyotaro Tsusui, but I'd just like to say he has had a very long and distinguished career in public life in Japan, and it's been a great pleasure to get to know him over the past couple of days on his return to Ann Arbor. So please join me in welcoming him. My colleague Kyotaro Tsusui from the Department of Sociology and the Associate Director of the Center for Japanese Studies will do the introduction.
Good afternoon. My name is Kyotaro Tsusui. I'm a faculty member in the sociology department here, and it's my great honor and pleasure to introduce and to welcome back Dr. Nishihara to Ann Arbor. As Jonathan mentioned, his undergraduate degree is from Kyoto University. With all due respect to the University of Tokyo, Kyoto University is the best in Japan because I went there and he went there. Then he came to Ann Arbor and earned his doctorate in political science. And he was a specialist of, at the time, especially Southeast Asian studies, and his early publication in English includes The Japanese and Skalno's Indonesia from the University of Hawaii Press. And since then, he taught at the National Defense Academy in Japan, and he became president of the National Defense Academy in Yokosuka from 2006. And he has been a visiting fellow at different universities in different countries, Australia, the United States. And he also had assumed many important government members' positions as government committee, such as from 2001 to 2003, he was Prime Minister Junichiro Koizumi's task force, a member of the task force on external relations. And under the current Abe administration, he was a member of the Prime Minister's Consulting Committee on the establishment of National Security Council. And from Friday to July of this year, he was a member of the Consulting Commission to assist Prime Minister's statement commemorating the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II. Yeah, some of you may have heard about that 70th anniversary statement by Prime Minister Abe. So he has a wide knowledge of international relations, Japan's foreign policy, especially as it relates to now defense policy and U.S.-Japan relations. And it's really great to welcome him back, and he has visited a lot of places that he used to live and he used to hang out. And the weather cooperated in the sense that it's cold enough to bring back good memories of Ann Arbor winter, but not so cold as to bring back bad memories of winter. And we live in an age of rebalance to Asia, and there are a lot of sensitive issues, international relations issues going on in Japan. And he recently published this book in Japanese. This is about the recent Anpo Hosei in Japan, the national, the reinterpretation of the Japan's defense policy, constitution provisions about Japan's defense policy. And this is, in English, it would be like, you will understand Japan's legislation about peace and security. That's the book, and it just hot off the press, just released last week. And some of his lecture, parts of his lecture will be based on this book, I imagine. And he will focus today on the JapanUS Alliance and the Sino-Republic of Korea Entente. So without any further ado, please join me in welcoming Professor Masashi Nishihara.
Thank you very much, Professor Zwick, for inviting me to this old Armada, and also Professor Tsi for a kind introduction. As Professor Tsi introduced, I was one time the president of National Defense Academy, which is a tri-service of school that would train cadets. So it would be equivalent in America is the West Point or Annapolis or Colorado Springs for 3 services. But in Japan, they're combined into one. And I was the president. I was the first Michigan graduate that had served in that position. So in that sense, if the Japanese defense policy should work better, you can claim credit for that success. But if something goes wrong, that's my problem. You can blame on me. Our Defense Academy is not very big, like the US service academies, but I have taught there for about 23 years or so. I taught international relations, and some of the graduates are now coming to the top position of the national defense forces. Therefore, as I said about the credit, you may claim or can criticize on me. The topic I want to discuss is on here. I think these are current issues, very current. I'll be talking about the Republic of Korea. President Park Geun-hye of South Korea is now currently visiting Washington. Perhaps today there will be a summit between Mr. Obama and the President Park Geun-hye. In that sense, the events in Washington has cooperated with the event in University of Michigan. Let me just say that over the last few months, the main focus in international or security, regional security in Asia, has been on the China's activities in South China Seas, reclamation of islands and so on and so forth. But today, I want to talk about the Northeast Asia, China, Korea, North Korea, Japan, and the United States. I don't have much time to talk about Russia itself. I would like to talk primarily about Northeast Asia. In my view, the Northeast Asia is undergoing 2 significant changes. The one is what I call a Chinese and South Korean entente. Entente in quote. It's not semi-allies between the 2 countries. The other one is a strengthening of the alliance between Japan and the United States. Naturally, these 2 changes interact with each other. After discussing these issues, I would like to talk and offer my view of the future of the region's security environment. The first issue I wish to discuss, there'll be about 4 items, 4 slides about this. There is much evidence that China and South Korea are becoming very close to each other, not just in economic areas, but also in political and security areas. In fact, they have become almost semi-allies. The 2 countries' closeness was demonstrated at a military parade in Tiananmen Square on September 3rd. President Park Geun-hye of South Korea, together with President Vladimir Putin of Russia, stood almost next to President Xi Jinping on the reviewing stand. The President Park reportedly vacillated between going and not going because of the Washington's strong discouragement. But she finally decided to attend. This was an indication of China's growing influence on Seoul, winning over that of the United States. I believe that the President Park decided to attend the parade not only because of her personal friendship with the President Xi Jinping, but also because of her strategic consideration that leaning toward China would facilitate her efforts to unify the Korean Peninsula under South Korea's auspices, and that collaborating with China on the World War II issue would also help her stand against Japan. There are other examples showing that South Korea taking sides with China against Washington in recent months. First, South Korea is increasingly supporting China's security interests. For example, when the United States planned to deploy anti-ballistic missiles, THAAD it's called, into South Korea, China strongly protested, fearing that they would make it vulnerable to U.S. missile attacks. Consequently, South Korea has not accepted the U.S. offer. It is now being discussed probably in Washington, or perhaps the report said to us yesterday, that both sides, considering this issue is so sensitive, would not cover an official dialogue between the two leaders. But it will be interesting to see how this issue will be handled in the future by the two countries. Second example is this. In March this year, South Korea joined the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, which China proposed, despite the U.S. opposition, and has been reluctant to join the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the TPP, which the United States has been strongly promoting. Only after the TPP negotiators came to an agreement on October 5th has Seoul begun to show its willingness to join it. Third example, South Korea has refrained from criticizing China's activities in the South China Sea and its military expansion in the Western Pacific. It is interesting to see that so many other countries in the region do criticize China's activities in South China Sea. South Korea has been pointedly has refrained from criticizing China. This demonstrates the collaboration of President Xi and President Park against the United States and Japan. For several decades, Japan's transgression during World War II have often destabilized its relations with South Korea and China. But it is under President Park that South Korea and China decided to collaborate in attacking Japan politically on this issue. President Xi is apparently favoring President Park here. His strategy must be to gain her trust and drive a wedge between South Korea and Japan. In addition, by weakening Japan, China is trying to weaken the Japanese-US alliances. In 2013, in a meeting with President Xi, President Park of South Korea proposed constructing a special memorial site honoring An Jung-gun inside the Harbin railway station in northeast China. An Jung-gun was a nationalist who opposed Japanese rule in Korea, and in 1909 he assassinated Hirobumi Ito, who was the first resident consul in Seoul. Xi Jinping consequently built not just a memorial site, but a big memorial hall at the station. I would like to show the pictures afterwards. Another example of collaboration between the two countries is this year. On September 4th, the day after the military parade, President Park visited Shanghai to celebrate the building that was once used by the Korean government in exile between 1919 and 1940, and that again that have been renovated by China. I'd like to talk about the factors behind the Beijing-Seoul Entente. There are at least four main factors why China and South Korea have developed such a close relationship. First, South Korea's economy is becoming increasingly dependent on China. In 2000, 9% of South Korea's total trade was done with China. But in 2013, the percentage went up to 21%, whereas South Korea's trade share with the U.S. decreased from 20 to 10%, and its share with Japan went down from 16 to 9%. South Korea is also dependent on China financially. On February 23rd this year, the currency swap agreement between Japan and South Korea was terminated for political reasons. And instead, South Korea went to China to have a large amount that promised for swap agreement in case of difficulties of foreign currencies. Therefore, the economy, or Korean economy, is tightly tethered to China's. Another factor behind this closeness between China and South Korea is uneasy relationship between Beijing and Pyongyang. Kim Jong-un has never revisited Beijing since he came to the office as North Korea's leader, nor has President Xi Jinping ever visited Pyongyang. North Korea's leadership has so far rejected the kind of economic reform that China has undertaken. Furthermore, execution of Kim Jong-un's uncle, Chan Son-tak, who was an advocate of Chinese-style economic reform, angered the Beijing leadership because of the executions. Indeed, as Tiananmen Square parade last month showed Choi Jong-hae, the secretary of North Korea's People's Workers' Party, was assigned a seat at the far end of the reviewing stand. It was interesting that Kim Jong-un invited Liu Yung-shan, number 5 in China's Communist Party, to stand next to him at the October 10th parade in Pyongyang. Was this a sign of rapprochement between China and North Korea, or was it simply a tactical sign of rapprochement between China and North Korea, or else? In any case, the parade demonstrated that continuing strong leadership or relationship between China and North Korea, which must make the South Korean quite nervous. Third factor, last few South Korean governments have been unhappy that the United States has been unable to persuade North Korea to give up its nuclear and missile programs. They feel that China might be able to do a better job, and just as important, could help with the unification process, since they believe that China has considerable influence over North Korea's leaders, and they would support South Korea's plan for reunification. In addition, leftist Koreans in South Korea have gone even more anti-American, and one leftist even stabbed U.S. Ambassador Mark Lippert in March this year. The fourth factor is deterioration of relationship between Japan and South Korea. Tensions are not new, but two events that took place toward the end of President Lee Myung-hak's term in office made them quite worse. I would mention simply that President Lee Myung-hak government canceled the special agreement on military protection of military secrets, and also he visited a disputed island of Takeshima, as we call it, or Dokdo as the Koreans called it. Today's power relations in Northeast Asia are different from that of just 4 years ago when Kim Jong-il was still in power in North Korea. At that time, China was helping to prop up North Korea's economy despite the UN sanctions. And China still continues to supply basic economic needs such as oil and rice. Now, however, although China and North Korea technically are still partners of a blood alliance, China has urged North Korea to suspend its nuclear and missile programs. Chinese and South Korean relations, as I've been talking about, have dramatically changed as well. During the Korean War, US and South Korea fought together against North Korea, which is supported by China. Today, however, South Korea sees its benefit in growing closer to China, recognizing that it has more influence over North Korea than the United States does. As a result, the United States' relations with South Korea are strained, and its relations with North Korea and China continue to be difficult. Even though Japan's relationship with the United States is very strong, its relationship with South Korea, as well as North Korea and China, are tense. Japan believes that China wants to drive a wedge between the United States and South Korea, between the United States and Japan, and between Japan and South Korea. In 2013, President Xi Jinping talked about the need to establish, quote, new types of big power relations in the Pacific, unquote. He had in mind the idea of dividing the Pacific into two parts and building up China's hegemony in the western half of the Pacific. Then in 2014, last year, Xi Jinping stated that, quote, Asian security should be discussed among Asians themselves, unquote. These two statements clearly shows that China wants to drive the Americans out of Asia, and simply that Korean Peninsula should be governed by Asians alone. We must keep this in mind when we think about the future of the region's security. Nonetheless, I think we should stop for a while to find some small signs of these countries maybe gradually reconciling their differences. Prime Minister Abe and Prime Minister Park had a short conversation at Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew's funeral in Singapore in March this year, and again at the UN luncheon last month. Although at that time, both Abe and Park Geun-hye were smiling when they met, none of the Korean newspapers have shown that picture. So you can see the sensitive aspect of that encounter. The foreign ministers of Japan, South Korea, China also conferred in New York in March, and the three ministers are also now preparing for a trilateral summit. So there are some signs of improving the relations. I should also add that Prime Minister Abe's statement on August 14th this year was considerately in that he referred to all of the items that South Korea and China demanded to be included in his statement. This was a statement referring to the 70th anniversary of the end of the Pacific War. Prime Minister Abe even referred to the comfort women, although not directly by that name. The statement helped reduce tensions between Japan and China and between Japan and South Korea. Despite this gradual reduction of tensions here, the Washington meeting in late September between Presidents Obama and Xi Jinping did not go very well concerning the issues of cybersecurity and the reclamation of reefs in South China Sea. How these disagreements between the region's two big powers will affect international relations in the future has yet to be seen. What is the future of Northeast Asia? We must pay particularly close attention to South Korea. On July 10th of this year, according to a South Korean newspaper, Hankyoreh, or maybe Hankyoreh, President Park Geun-hye stated that, quote, Korean unification might even come as soon as 2016. Let me repeat, Korean unification might even come as soon as 2016, unquote. She based her speculation on the fact that the people who have influence in North Korea are defecting. Could unification really happen so soon? Would the collapse of the regime be peaceful or violent and messy? In any case, I assume that South Korea will lead the reunification of Korea, although I think that this will be in the distant future, not next year, as Park Geun-hye kind of predicts. I see the three scenarios for United Korea. One is, as I put it down here, pro-China United Korea. If South Korea increases its dependence on China, Washington-Seoul alliance will probably end. In a conflict over the DMZ, demilitarized zones, the United States would have a vital role in supporting South Korea. By the negotiations between North and South, China would be more heavily involved than the United States. And in this case, United Korea might ask the United States to withdraw from the peninsula, in making Korea now China's ally, just as North Korea has been China's ally for the last seven decades. Second scenario is a pro-US United Korea. South Korea might resist China's growing influence over the peninsula, and consequently attempt to build a United Korea with United States and Japanese support. Because South Korea is an open society with a free market economy and partnership or alliances with the United States and Japan is likely to have a greater benefit for that country. Third scenario is a neutral United Korea. To unite Korea with both United States and China's support, South Korea may opt for neutrality. Korea would then try to balance its relationship with the United States and China, with Japan supporting the U.S. interests. There is a speculation that in a not too distant future, Kim Jong-un of North Korea might visit Beijing to ask for its support, since Liu Un-shan attended the military parade in Pyongyang recently. His visit would simply strengthen China's hand in manipulating North and South Korea, with South Korea then shift back to the United States side. In whatever direction the Korean Peninsula moves, the alliance between Japan and the United States is likely to remain intact. The two nations share strategic interests in maintaining the alliance. The United States Pacific Power must maintain access to its bases in Japan so that it can project its power across Asia and the Middle East. Japan needs United States support to maintain its territorial integrity, particularly the Senkaku Islands today, and its economic activities in Asia, as well as its access to natural resources in other parts of the world, particularly the Middle East. The TPP will help strengthen both Obama's rebalance policy and Japan-US alliance. September 19th, the Japanese Diet passed new laws regarding the country's security. Professor Tsui kindly referred to the book I have edited recently about the new laws. By relaxing the interpretation of the Constitution's clause on defense, self-defense forces now may expand their role in protecting Japan and contributing to international peace and security. The new laws specify, for example, the self-defense forces' role in extending their logistical support of the United States and other forces in certain situations that may become critical to Japanese security. The Korean Peninsula and South China Sea may fit this category. As you see here, the Japanese forces will become a little more active than the past. But they will not enter the Korean Peninsula unless South Korean government requests for it, which is not likely today, given the tensions, difficulties between the two countries. In addition, these laws stipulate closer coordinations among the self-defense forces, the Maritime Safety Agency, Japan's Coast Guard, and the police. In April 2015, Japan and the United States also issued a new version of the guidelines for Japan-US defense cooperation. It's a new version because of the new laws that have been adopted by the Japanese government. These efforts by the two countries show how the two forces would coordinate their missions in the future. In his trip to Japan in April 2014, President Obama made a strong statement in supporting the Senkaku Islands, which he claimed to be under Japanese administration. So this is a source of contention between Japan and China, as you see. New laws, defense cooperation guidelines for Japanese American forces will strengthen their position in preventing